Great time. And hopefully next year.
And maybe even some of us older owners is. But I'm back.
Best bet is probably them going for 24 frames per second. Then that would be actually accurate. That would match.
But why are we talking about frame rate?
Because that's what the TV standard would be.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying.
You said standard. That's what started all this. You said standard.
We're talking about we're talking about online standard, then resolution standards.
Yes. Yeah, a resolution standard means it has to adhere to what the existing standards were before they. That's what a standard is, right?
Okay. Games today are HD games. HD is a standard for consoles, right? Can we just clear that up?
No, because consoles don't have standard.
Okay. Well, you guys heard it. HD is not a standard for the modern consoles.
Hello, greetings. Guys have probably been missing me for a bit. I haven't really done a video in a while, so let's just get down to business, shall we?
Who'da stepped in the game at point blank range? Who'da stepped in the game at point blank range? Who'da stepped in the game? Stepped in the game. Stepped in the game.
So, the topic of this video is another Infernal thought process video, and it's with regards to invented standards.
Eureka!
They are indeed invented. So the last video I did was a debate, and that debate was with Shokyo. And this particular thought process video isn't in regards to the video itself. It's more the feedback that I got from the video, and it kind of let me know that a lot of people are misinformed. And it kind of starts with one comment that was made with regards to standards, and that was a comment where Shokyo made it known that he felt that online gaming is an industry standard, and that HD gaming was an industry standard, and the entire hubbub and a lot of people were either upset or just wanted to troll, I guess, with regards to what HD gaming is and whether it's an industry standard or not. And while it can always be said that it is a standard, because standard is a vague definition or whatever, a standard could be anything. If two or more people do anything, it's an established standard because it's common. So that's really a misnomer, and that's not the point or the gist of what I was talking about from the beginning. A lot of people obviously wanted to force what I was saying into something else, but let's get down to the nitty gritty and talk about what I was really talking about. Industry standards very rarely exist for video games. There are four that I know of that have come into play. So they've been around for quite a bit, and they're needed, obviously. So they aren't anything to do with HD gaming or online gaming at all. They're more to do with how the business is run and how to keep video game publishers from being sued from angry parents and things of that nature. So with regards to the HD gaming standard, HD gaming is not an industry standard. There is no organization together from any group of video game developers or any group of console manufacturers or any group of PC hardware vendors that have established and said that, hey, HD gaming is a video game standard. What is really happening is video game consoles and PC graphics cards and PC vendors and things of that nature, they are establishing two existing computer display and TV standards. So computer display standards have existed long before any TV standards have existed, because they were usually static displays. There was no video on these, so they could be as big as possible. If you think about it, there were TV resolutions above, there were computer display resolutions above 1080p well before 720p TVs became common back in 2005. So a static computer display can be as big as possible as long as the frame buffer for the video card is big enough, which, you know, you only needed around 16 to maybe 24 megs of pixel bandwidth per frame. A static display can be infinitely as big as you want it to be, and there are many standards that exist right now for computer displays that outdo anything we'll ever see in video for the next 10 to 15 years, because the bandwidth for video is exponentially larger than that of a static display. That should be common sense for anybody that's at least a computer science minor. Now, what we got into with regards to that argument was that 720p was established back in the 7th generation or something to that effect, which wasn't really commonplace because there were a lot of dodgy games that had sub HD frame buffer and things of that nature, and even there were games that ran lower bandwidth than some Xbox One games that ran in 1080i. It's kind of backwards. I guess the fidelity that they were trying to look for, or how can I say, this intangible graphic detail was so important that they forewent the initial resolution that was promised back in 2005 and 2006. So HD gaming being a standard is only a standard for this current generation, but even then it's not an industry standard. The industry standard is set by ATSC, and ATSC established the standard for television broadcast and how your external monitor or your VGA monitor can receive the information from the video game console, which is why it establishes it at the frame rates that it establishes it for different territories. So for NSTC, which is the United States of America, is 59.4 frames per second or something to that effect at 720p or at 1080p for your 1080p 60 or your 720p 60. It's not really true 60 frames per second, but it's around that. So the signal on the TV, so the signal going to the TV or the monitor isn't confused because it's going over the hertz rating of that display. That's a little bit too technical, but that's exactly kind of the kind of stuff that I was talking about, which was a bit of a fallacy in the discussion that I was having in that last debate. So HD gaming isn't a standard. Not an industry standard at all. It can be a standard, but I don't know, the Wii U motion control could be a standard because more than 2 consoles use it. So that's common, and therefore it could be a standard. I don't know. That's industry standard and standard are 2 completely different things. I was talking about, obviously, industry standards. And there's no ratified document, there is no organization that has chartered what is a standard in a video game for anything other than, say, ratings and how it's developed using SLAs and different agreements that developers sign with publishers and things of that nature. Those are the only things that are really standard. ATSC establishes the TV standards. DCI establishes the film standards. So film standards are a little bit more stringent than TV standards. So the 4K that you see in a movie theater or that's recorded for a film is a tad bit larger than the UHD, if you will, for a 4K monitor that you would buy from Sam's or whatever outlet you choose to buy your TVs from. So it's about 3,800 pixels or so wide for the standard TV 4K resolution, and it's well over 4,000 pixels wide for the 4K resolution, the true 4K resolution for a digital film that's established by Digital Cinema Initiatives, or DCI. What video games are doing is video games are establishing to that standard, and they're taking that branding from ATSC and DCI and labeling that on their console to say that they support that broadcast resolution. One of the other things that was kind of confusing was there were a couple people mentioning in my comments that HDMI was in all the consoles now, so therefore HD is a standard. HDMI is a cable interface that has nothing to do with the display resolution of the console itself or whether that's an industry standard or not. HDMI is not an industry standard for video game consoles. It specifically is the CEA 861 standard. And that is a serial device mechanism standard. So all devices, be it computers, TVs, AV equipment, capture devices, video game consoles, or what have you, they all have that standard. And what I tried to make to the case to many people that were talking about HDMI being a standard, there are DVD players right now that are not HD, that are not Blu-ray, that have an HDMI port. They may or may not do HD upscaling, but their native resolution is 480 by 720. That's well below 720p, and that's well below 1920 by 1080. Yet, there is an HDMI logo on the box. So HDMI does not guarantee HD gaming or even HD broadcast in general. It is literally just a cable standard that basically replaces DVI. The only difference between it and DVI is that digital audio now goes over the same cable. The actual spec for DVI HDMI is the same with regards to video. You could literally buy a $2 adapter that converts HDMI to just raw video, and there's literally no difference whatsoever between the signal. The only difference is, hey, one has pins, the other one has pins on the inside, and it looks more like a USB cable. There's a lot of misnomers with regards to the whole resolution game, and people like to take information that they see a lot and try to bring it about and everything and talk about it because everybody's really excited about this kind of stuff. It's their passion. Well, my passion is a little bit deeper than that because I kind of do this for a living, so I'm a little bit more technical than a lot of other people that kind of think about these things. So with regards to some of the other standards, I mean, like all these consoles have standards they have to adhere to. So every console since the 6th generation has at least established to some type of network protocol. So they had to be ratified by the FCC and IEEE, and in some cases the RSA if they had any type of wireless encryption or something like that. Then you had the PS2 and the original Xbox, which had USB or some variant thereof. So they had to meet the standards of the USB-IF or IEEE. So they had to make those standards, not their own. There was no standards for Xbox means we have USB. They don't have their own standard in place. There's no organization that sets that. So with regards to wireless, there is no standard that sets that for video games as well. It's literally just IEEE and FCC. If they put that port on that platform, they have to make sure that it meets the FCC regulations, as well as the disc medium they use. So for the Blu-ray technology, the modified Blu-ray that's in all three of these platforms, they have to meet the FCC standards as well as a Class 1, Class 2 laser product if they meet those standards. So those are all ratified organizations that they still have to adhere to. There is no standard for a video game console for the laser density or for a disk drive. There is no standard for what size hard drive or what type of hard drive goes in them. There is no standard for what type of USB port there is. They use existing standards and they apply them to their hardware. That is the way that works. That is the way it always has been, unfortunately. And until the video game industry gets more mature and they start establishing their own standards, it's going to continue to be this way. HD graphics are not an industry standard. They're just a GPU output. All it does is comply with the existing HD TV or computer display standards already in place. There's no video display standard invented by video game hardware. There's not a consortium that exists specifically for video game standards. And unlike ATSC and DCI that exists for television and film display standards, there's nothing there for video games, unfortunately. Industry standards that the video games do have in place are the ones I kind of touched upon before. So the ESRB, which is the result of Sega inventing their own standard or their own internal council, Nintendo inventing their own internal council for video game ratings, and then 3DO following up, making their own standards or whatever. And once they did that, what ended up becoming of the 3DO rating system ended up being the ESRB, and they started covering all the platforms. So that is an industry standard in place. That is specifically for the video game, the electronic entertainment ratings board. That is specifically for electronic entertainment. So that is an industry standard that was actually established by console video games, nonetheless, and established for basically all video games. It extends to PC games now at this point. So that's rather interesting, and that's one that was actually started by the video game industry. PEGI is pretty much the same thing, but it's used abroad. The ESA is a new established standard. Well, it's been around for a while, but it's fairly new compared to any other standards out there. But it's more for business relations, government relations, and PR and things like that, rather than, hey, this console will have this and this console will have this. They also kind of run how the business relations and how the different meetings and things go during E3, and that's why they charter that, because they want to make sure that video games have a place to barter their business back and forth, and that the trade isn't faltered by a bunch of people being, jerks, I guess, if you will. The IDGA is another standard that was established, and it's basically just an association of it's how can I say this? It is the Screen Actors Guild or the Writers Guild for developing games, to where that all developers get together and they establish their ideas. They try to establish standards for development, different types of software development kits and things of that nature, as far as what should be an established standard or what are best business practices for developing video games or computer games for insert platform here. Yeah, that's pretty much it. There are no other real standards that I know of. If any of you guys have seen any other video game standards out there, like, these are the only ones that I've monitored over the past 15, 20 years or so. I haven't really seen any others established. But with regards to that, those are the only ones that are in place. All the other standards that are talked about are basically complied standards that video game manufacturers just followed along and did, because there's a HD TV out, and it would be nice that, hey, a video game can output to that HD TV to its maximized resolution, so it looks pretty clear. So those things are that's just the way things are. That's the way things have been for quite a while. Video games have been they've been trying to adhere to TV standards for quite a while. It's just they didn't change this drastically in about 20 years or so. So when the first couple of generations started off, we had the same 320 and 480i resolution for the better part of 15 to 20 years. So the resolution game didn't change for quite a while. Now, while the video game resolutions were a lot lower than that, they didn't have to establish anything higher than 480i. And they could always reach up that high if they wanted to, or they could dial back down depending on the capabilities of the hardware. Computer games, on the other hand, were a little bit different, because computer display standards were established by the VGA and HDA standards that exist today. And those different standards can vary depending on video card manufacturers, PC manufacturers, computer display manufacturers, and things like that can really alter how that landscape worked. Obviously now it's not going to be that much, because HDTV is kind of a thing, and a lot of people, for whatever reason, connect HDTVs to their PC for their gaming. I guess the game in the living room or whatnot. People tend to take things as fact because other people are doing it. Just because a bunch of people do it doesn't mean that it's accurate or the right thing. It doesn't mean that it's commonplace, and it doesn't mean that it's a standard. It just means that you observed that a lot of people were doing it. And it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the way things are or that it's ratified, official, or an industry standard. And I say industry standard again, so it isn't confused with the word standard. You play games to have fun or to impress other people?
As I recall,
Yeah.
were you using pot then?
I was selling
You were
pot
an
then.
athlete.
Yeah, I was selling pot then.
And would you want your children to do that?
Nah, but it was a means
why
for me.
is that?
It was a way of living. It was a way of living for me.
Why don't you want your children to do it, man?
Because I did it for them. I sacrificed that so they won't have to do that.